This happened only a few months ago, and even now, it doesn't feel completely real when I think back on it. I work overnight shifts at a distribution warehouse, which means my entire life runs opposite to most people's schedules. I usually get home around dawn, sleep through the day, and stay awake from early evening until late morning. Even on my days off, I keep the same routine. It's easier on my body that way. On this particular night, I clocked out at around 4 a.m. and drove straight home. The roads were completely empty, the kind of quiet you only get in the early hours before sunrise. When I turned onto my street, everything looked normal till I pulled closer to my house. Parked right beside my driveway was a car I didn't recognize. I slowed down instinctively as I passed it, trying to get a better look before pulling into my garage. It was an older black sedan, the kind you don't really notice until you're looking directly at it. The windows were heavily tinted, dark enough that I couldn't see inside at all. No headlights, no interior lights, nothing running. I parked and sat there for a moment. Glancing back down the driveway, the layout of my neighborhood made the situation feel off. Houses weren't close together, and street parking was plentiful. There was absolutely no reason for anyone to park directly beside my driveway when there were so many open spots nearby. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe someone visiting one of my neighbors. Maybe they parked poorly in the dark. Still, something about it nagged at me. About an hour later, before going to bed, I checked again from the window. The car was gone. The rest of the day passed normally. I slept, woke up around 6 in the evening, and got ready for another shift. When I left for work that night, the car wasn't there. I put it out of my mind. The next shift felt longer than usual, exhausting in a way I couldn't quite explain. I remember looking forward to the following night, knowing I'd finally have some time off. When I drove home again just after 4 a.m., the street was empty except for that same black sedan, parked in the exact same spot beside my driveway. This time, the unease hit harder. I passed it slowly, once again trying to see inside, but the windows reflected nothing. After parking in the garage, I walked down the driveway toward the road, telling myself I was being paranoid. As I got closer, I thought I saw movement behind the tinted glass, just a flicker. Barely noticeable, something caught from the corner of my eye. I froze. I stopped about 10 feet away, not willing to get any closer if someone was inside. I stood there for a moment, heart racing, but nothing else moved. It could have been a reflection. It could have been nothing. Before going back inside, I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the license plate. I didn't know why exactly, just a gut feeling telling me I might need it later. Once again, when I checked later, the car was gone. The situation was unsettling, but nothing had actually happened. No confrontation, no damage. I tried to rationalize it and went about my night-made food, watched TV, and eventually went to sleep. When I woke up that evening, the sun was already down. Since I had the night off, I went for my usual long walk around the neighborhood. When I left the house, the car wasn't there. But when I came back an hour later, it was same place, same angle, same blacked out windows. I had walked nearly the entire neighborhood. There were barely any cars on the street at all. And yet, somehow, this one kept appearing only in front of my house and only at night. This time, I approached it directly. I stepped right up to the driver's side window and pressed my hand against the glass to block the reflection, trying to see inside. The car was completely empty. No person, no belongings, nothing that explained why it was there. That's when I went back inside and grabbed my phone. I noticed a notification I hadn't seen earlier. Motion alert from my security system. I had a camera on my front porch that only activated if someone was directly at the door, and several cameras inside covering the main rooms. The alert didn't specify which camera had detected movement. When I opened the app, there was a saved 60-second clip. For most of the footage, nothing happened. The room was silent and still. I was just about to dismiss it as a glitch when, in the final few seconds, something moved. A figure passed quickly through the bottom edge of the frame. It was only visible for a fraction of a second, part of a head and shoulders, but it was unmistakably a person. My hands went numb. The camera footage was from the bedroom I was standing in. The silence inside the house suddenly felt crushing. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears as I slowly turned, scanning every corner of the room. They could be anywhere. I didn't wait to find out. I moved toward the doorway, and the moment I did, I heard movement behind me. Footsteps. Fast, close. By the time I reached the stairs, someone was charging down the hallway after me no more than 15 feet behind. I ran. I burst through the front door and sprinted straight into the woods behind my house. I never looked back. I didn't want to see who was chasing me. I just wanted to survive. Eventually, the only sound left was my own breathing and my footsteps crunching through leaves. That's when I called 911. When police arrived, the car was gone. But I showed them the license plate photo I had taken the night before. It took them 3 hours to track him down. They arrested a man in his mid-20s. According to the officers, he was unstable, completely detached from reality. They found photos on his phone of my house. Photos taken at night. Photos through my windows. Notes detailing my work schedule. Times I left. Times I came home. He'd been watching me for at least 2 weeks. What still terrifies me is this. We never figured out how he got inside my house without triggering the cameras or how many times he might have done it before. The only reason I knew he was there that night was because he made a single mistake, stepping briefly into view of one camera. If he hadn't, I might never have known. And that's the part I can't stop thinking about. This happened about 4 years ago, but it's one of those nights that still comes back to me at random moments. Usually when the weather turns bad or I'm driving alone too late. At the time, I was working as an Uber driver. Stormy nights were usually a gamble. Sometimes they were great because people didn't want to drive themselves, but other times the weather scared everyone indoors and the app stayed completely silent. Even so, I always stayed out. Even 1 or 2 rides could make the night worth it. When business was slow, I'd usually park somewhere empty, listen to music, scroll through my phone, or watch videos while the rain hammered down around me. That night, the storm was intense. Rain poured down in sheets, thunder rolled through the town, and the streets were completely deserted. For the first hour or so, I sat in an empty parking lot, watching the rain blur the streetlights and listening to the wind whip through the buildings. Eventually, I drove out to grab some food, then returned to another quiet lot to wait. I wasn't expecting much. Then, my phone buzzed. A ride request finally came through, but it wasn't a normal one. The pickup location was about 25 minutes away from me, and the drop-off point was another 20 minutes beyond that. That usually meant no other drivers were online, and the app had assigned me by default. Normally, I might have skipped it, but it was slow. I was bored, and the money was decent. So I accepted the ride and started driving. The trip out there felt strange from the beginning. The roads grew darker, emptier. Houses disappeared. Streetlights became scarce. At times, it didn't even feel like I was heading toward a passenger. It felt like I was just driving aimlessly through the storm. The rain didn't help. Visibility was poor, and the sound of it hitting the windshield made everything feel muffled and distant. After about 35 minutes, I reached the pickup point. According to the map, it was the intersection of 2 roads. In reality, it was the middle of nowhere. Trees lined both sides, thick and dark, with empty land stretching out beyond them. No buildings, no lights, no signs of life, and most importantly, no passenger. I marked that I had arrived and sat there, scanning the area, confused about why anyone would request a ride from such a place during a storm like this. As I reached for my phone to message the rider, I noticed movement in my side mirror. Before I could react, the rear door opened and someone got in. I hadn't seen him approach. Not from the road, not from the trees. 1 second the area was empty, and the next he was in my car. The man was soaked, rain dripping from his clothes and hair. His expression was tense, angry. His eyes looked sharp and unsettled. "You called for an Uber?" I asked cautiously. Instead of answering directly, he said my first name. That confirmed it. He was the right passenger. I pulled away from the intersection and continued driving. Almost immediately, something felt wrong. He sat in the exact center of the back seat, perfectly aligned with my rearview mirror. Every time I glanced up, I saw his eyes. He didn't look around casually like most passengers. He watched me. The silence stretched. The further we drove, the more isolated the area became. The unease settled deep in my stomach. I wanted to ask questions. Why he was out there, why he'd been standing in the rain, but I didn't want to provoke anything. Eventually, I forced myself to speak. "So, what had you out here tonight? Especially with weather like this?" I asked, keeping my tone light. I looked at him in the mirror. His eyes flicked away. His mouth opened slightly, like he was about to answer. Then he didn't. He ignored the question completely. That alone sent a chill through me. After that, his behavior changed. He started shifting in his seat, glancing around more, watching me closely through the mirror. Between the rain on the windshield and his presence behind me, I felt trapped and unable to see clearly, unable to relax. Then, without warning, he spoke. "Pull over. Drop me here." I was confused. "Are you sure?" Here, he repeated sharply. I didn't argue. I slowed down and pulled to the side of the road. As he moved toward the door, I noticed his eyes flick to my phone on the center console, where the Uber app was still open. He hesitated. He stared at the screen for a moment longer than necessary. Then he pulled out his own phone and checked something. In that instant, I understood. He remembered. The app had his name, his account, a record of the ride. Whatever he had been thinking of doing, whatever had brought him out there, was suddenly traceable. I saw the realization settle into his expression. Trying to keep things calm, I spoke quickly. "Hey, don't worry. I'll cancel the ride on my end. You won't be charged." His eyes locked onto mine cold, flat, and unreadable. After a few tense seconds, he stepped out of the car. The rain swallowed him almost instantly. Fog and darkness blurred his shape until he disappeared completely. I didn't wait. I pulled back onto the road and drove away, my heart pounding. Even though I had no solid proof he meant harm, something deep inside told me I'd just avoided something terrible. As soon as I got somewhere safe, I contacted the police and reported the incident. A few days passed, then I got a call. Someone had gone missing that same night last seen near the forest close to where I'd picked him up. I gave the police everything I could. The timeline, the location, the interaction. Unfortunately, the storm had erased any possible tracks or evidence. Searches turned up nothing. They never found the missing person. They never found the man I picked up. I was the last known person to see him alive. To this day, I think about how close I came to not driving away. How close I came to becoming another missing person tied to that road. And I know one thing for sure. I was incredibly lucky to make it home that night.